Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Cage Talk. Today, I have an MMA legend. He was National Collegiate Athletic Association, NCAA Division I All-American out of Oklahoma State, 1990, 1986, and 1987. National Junior College Athletic Association Junior Championship out of Triton College in 1984. And in 1985, we have Brazil Open 97 Heavyweight Tournament Championship and Martial Arts Reality Super Fighting Tournament runner-up. We have the legend himself that's fought in Pride.
Oh, easy. One tournament runner. It wasn't a tournament runner-up. We tied. It was a draw in the finals with Murillo and I. It wasn't a runner-up. There was nobody won.
No one won. I added that little spice in there for you.
That's why I know that one for a fact.
Well, we have, ladies and gentlemen, Tom the Big Cat Erikson. How you doing today, buddy? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing really good. Now I'm at Duke University. I work as a wrestling coach, and director of wrestling operations at Duke University. So weather's nice. It's like 55 degrees here. Here it's freezing over by you, but here we're doing good. I think the window might be cracked open a little bit. You see that?
Yeah.
Nice and cool air coming in.
Nice.
But
nice.
Doing well, man. I appreciate you having me on. This is really cool. Thank you.
No, it's the honor is mine just because like I said before we were talking a little bit, a big fan. I loved the old school fighters. There's just so many good stories that come out from over there, especially when you fought in Pride and stuff. I know I had Gary Goodridge on, which, by the way, he texted me, said that he loves you, man. So it's good to have, I guess, those relationships and just to talk about those stories back in the day,
Yeah, Gary's my brother from another mother for sure, man. And ironically, our friendship started after we fought. Literally after we fought, we fought, and then we got to be good friends. But ironically enough, it actually started before that. I was fighting on the Raw team, and we went to Canada, I think Montreal, and Vladimir, the janitor, Matashenko, had to fight Vernon White in one of their events.
Okay.
And we walked into the event, and Gary was standing by the door. And, in hindsight, I didn't realize at the time, but Gary's eyeing me up as I walked in the door. And I'm like, hey, what's up, man? Walk in. I could care less. He must have knew something then that I didn't know, that we were going to end up fighting. And then a month or so later, man, a contract rolls across my desk. Here you go. We're fighting him. So I'm like, oh, okay. Now it makes sense why he was eyeing me up at that event.
Yeah, he was looking at his opponent soon to be. Talking about, back in the days in Pride and stuff. But before that, I mean, obviously you started, your main passion was wrestling. What was it about wrestling that you were so driven to do and stuff? It was someone that you looked up to when you were younger, or just something you kind of
wrestling's an individual sport.
Yes, sir.
And it's an individual sport with team aspects. It's one guy taking care of business. You can't one guy can't affect the overall outcome of an event. Not like basketball or football.
Yes.
And even football, you need some help. But basketball, one dude could take it over. He can score 60, and kind of win a game. But wrestling, and then the other adage that wrestling has, it's anybody can wrestle, and if you kind of, not anybody, but anybody can wrestle. So there's weight classes. Yeah. So you're going to compete and fight someone more or less your exact weight class. Me being a heavyweight, which is like 200 pounds and up to 285. So there's a limit there in the range and stuff like that. But I don't know. I always enjoyed it, and to be honest, I sucked at it. Wasn't very good. I've coached in college a long time. I've coached at Oklahoma State. I've coached, in high school. I've coached and ran my own program, an NAI program. Now I'm here at Duke. And I can assure every one of these kids that are in our programs, they're better than I was. Mm-hmm. I've won the World Cup. I've placed in the World Championships. I've been in the U.S. Open finals 12 times. I think it's a record. I wrestled in 16 U.S. Opens. I never finished lower than fourth in any of them.
Wow.
Alternate on 3 Olympic teams. And I'm not saying all this to brag about myself. I'm going to say, here's the kicker when I say all that stuff. I never qualified for a state tournament in high school. As a
Really?
high school wrestler, I never qualified for my state high school tournament.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
And then I give, just speeches, et cetera. And I talk about my career and I'm like, hey, please forgive me. This is going to sound very egotistical, and it's not. And it's just basically telling you, look, you can do this. Anybody can do this.
Yes, sir.
And you just got to have the drive, passion, desire to be successful, et cetera. And I can think a lot of hard work, but my team, look, you guys were, you were third place in such and such a state. Why can't you do what I do?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's mind blowing. Yeah, but it shows you, right?
People don't, realize that. And I tell them that, oh, you've always been good. You always said, no, man, it's a lot of hard work. And there's a lot we put into this. And any one of these guys, man, you don't see the hours that these guys put into it behind the scenes, et cetera. I'm not saying I put in more, I put in less. I put my time in. But my story is slightly different. You look at all these guys, these wrestlers, elite level wrestlers, and we've got a lot of good ones right now. And they were successful in high school, man. If I told people that, well, not people, I just did, they're going to be like, no way. I'm like, I never qualified. And I wrestled in Illinois, which biasly saying is a very tough state. It's
very
one of the top
tough, yeah.
five, and different, but it's definitely in the top five. But yeah, I made it probably one match away to qualify for the state tournament. So yeah, so I don't have, my background pretty good, but if you go back deep into my background, it's like, nah, you're missing that state tournament. And honestly, that hurt me the most.
Really?
I carry that with me every day. Well, think about it. Back in high school, man, everybody loves you back in high school. Like,
That's true.
I don't know, but for you, but my, and us for my high school at the second period, they had the announcements over the PA. They'd have that little bell chiming, and then you'd hear the day's announcement. Well, if you kick some butt or did something good at an event, won an award, they talk about you. And oh, by the way, everybody's looking at you in the class, which is cool. And then after that class period, everybody's like, yo, man, nice job, man. They're giving you that love. I never got that. I did okay, a couple of events and stuff like that, but I never got that state champ. I never got those accolades. And man, I miss that. I mean, you're only a kid once, et cetera. I've done some pretty cool things in my life, I think. And, but that's one of the things I don't say regret, but, I kind of wish I had a do-over.
Yeah, definitely. But, wow. Yeah, I knew a couple of state champs. And again, like you said, it's kind of like that recognition in high school. Like, oh, shit, like his name was Ozzy, and it was in Miami. It's like, oh, there's Ozzy, man. Yeah, he's a state champ. It almost went with his name, though. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, Ozzy, that's his last name, whatever. It was, hey, that's, the state champ Ozzy, So it was that recognition.
Yeah, those dudes, they jump those gaps, man. You could do it in the lunchroom. Everybody knows him. They give us props. There's no racial discrimination. Man, that's that dude, man. That's that tough ass dude right there, man. That dude's a state champ. Oh man, he's bad. Don't mess with him.
Yep.
Don't even matter color, race, creed, anything.
Yep.
They give him his props.
Oh.
Never had that. No, I hear him. I'm going. Yeah, I'm good. It's all good.
No, man. Like I said, you had a legendary career. And I known about you because I remember watching you back in Pride. Now, we'll obviously talk a little bit about Pride and stuff like that, but how did you get into mixed martial arts? I know you were supposed to fight in UFC, right? You were supposed to fight in UFC. I think it was like 10, if I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, that was talked about. Man, I got to pay homage to my boys. Dan Severn was our first guy that crossed over, and Dan was done with his career and then jumped into mixed martial arts and the UFC. But then the next guy that probably really jump started it for us was probably Coleman.
Mark Coleman.
Coleman came right off the Olympic trials and did really well. Didn't quite make it, and then jumped into the UFC. Won that event. Everybody's like, oh, I don't know about a wrestler, but he jumped into it and then won and was really successful. Then all of a sudden, I want to say the floodgates kind of opened, but a lot of guys start jumping in there and they start doing these hybrid events. One of the events I competed in was called the Contenders. I don't know if you remember that one.
No,
Frank Shamrock submitted, was it Kevin Jackson, Matt Hume, ankle locked Kenny Monday. John Dennis Hall was in there.
Yeah, we thrown some
Man, we had a
old school names.
bunch of guys in there. But I fought Toyoshi Kasaka in that event, and I beat him. I was one of the few guys that won. A bunch of wrestlers, we got rocked up, but we were just knuckleheads, man. We can out wrestle anybody. Tough guys, take it up. Dude, man, them dudes were submitting us. Matter of fact, TK had me in an ankle lock, and I don't know, I think it was John McCarthy was the referee. You good? I'm like, no, man, he break my ankle. I'm good. I ain't tapping that. And end up slipping out of it, and end up winning. I passed guard. I think I passed his guard a couple times. That was just good enough. But that's just a long, boring match. But that was a big eye opener for wrestlers. Then we kind of get the UFC and what was it? WEC. I think a couple of events where they let wrestlers kind of do their thing. But after a while, man, no wrestling. You better put that ego in check, man. You got to do a lot more than just wrestle.
Yeah, well, it was weird though, like, because UFC was, it started in the 90s, and first it was jiu-jitsu. What was Royce Gracie doing? Like, no one understood that, and then came the age almost of the wrestler, and we're like, shit. Like, now you have wrestlers, you got a bunch of them, like you said, Mark Coleman, you had Dan Severn, then you had the wrestler sort like that age come in, and then you started slowly with the stand-up, and then it's like almost like UFC kind of evolved with each of the fighters as it got older.
Oh.
So.
Yeah, no joke, man. You look at it now compared to the days when I fought and stuff like that. It's just generationally, it's gotten better. I love watching it, man, because it's gotten better. I have no ego about it. Of course, it's gotten better. It's evolved. I mean, remember when GSP was the guy? He's the quintessential guy that transcended it. And then you had Anderson Silva that jumped in there, and then John Bones jumped on. Bones Jones jumped in there, and he was the next guy. Then, interesting stuff with his life. And then a guy that I thought was a monster when there was JDS, man, I thought he was tough. Kane came in there with this super monster gas tank at heavyweight, and he got exposed. And, right now, you've got Stipe in there who's kind of running court now with mixing it up, striking. If that's at heavyweight, by the way, but those guys, and you got Magomedov down there ruling his thing. Adesanya's good. I mean, those guys, they're just such great fighters. It's so cool to watch, and it's just like makes you really feel old to see how much it's progressed in that time frame.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's evolving in front of your eyes, right? Because before the cage was a little rough,
absolutely.
The rules were different. Now everything looks like a little bit more organized. What's up?
Yeah, no, my fault. One of the things that I think it's a high and low point. I know it sounds bad. I'm gonna get on my soapbox and stuff. Is Connor? Connor phenomenal. I've had guys that wrestle for me and stuff like, "Oh, Connor's the good." I said, "Dude, and he's like 1-4 the last 5 fights. Give me a break." But he took it to a marketing aspect. He showed us the marketing aspect of it and killed it. He didn't take the technical aspect of it. Connor is a good fighter. Let's just say he's a good fighter.
Yeah.
He's held some belts. He talked his way more into that. And if you really break it down, he's got a couple decent fights, but he hadn't fought anybody. Love Diaz. Diaz tough as nobody's business. But that isn't like a world-class championship fighter. I mean, he's beaten that. And he can peak up to that level, but look at his last 5 fights. You go ahead and break down guys' records, their last 5 fights when they're fighting. He hadn't fought anybody, but Connor did a great job in marketing. But now we've kind of moved on. Okay, forget the marketing. Let's go back to the skill set. Let's go back to guys who can actually fight, punch, strike, ground, pound, the whole 9 yards.
Yep. I agree with you on that one with Connor, because people would say that Connor's ground game was underrated, but I don't think so. I don't think it was just there. He had good stand-up. He knew how to talk. He knew how to sell a fight, but his ground game was his weakness completely.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, but okay. Hey, look, I saw a stat. I had a friend of mine, actually, a wrestling person, threw out a stat about, Poirier has X amount of rounds and this and stuff like that. And Connor had, 8. Poirier's got 80 or whatever. It was just some crazy stat. I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but his point was, see, you got to fight to win. Then my sarcastic self, I said, look, how many belts does Connor have and how much money did Connor make? And would Poirier trade those rounds for those titles and that money? You're damn skippy, he would.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. 100%.
You know, like us in wrestling, you know, and you want to wrestle and you want to compete, but ultimately we want to pin guys. That's the way you end a match. You pin guys, you score more points, or you pin them, put their shoulders to the mat.
Yes,
In
sir.
fighting wise, you knock people out or submit them.
That's it.
So, you know, kind of a manner of thinking, if you want to fight lots of rounds and you don't want to knock somebody out or pin somebody, hey, ask my boy, you just had him on. I don't know if you ever said that or whatever, but I learned this from Gary. Look, anything after one round in an MMA fight is unpaid overtime.
That sounds good. I never heard that before. He's never mentioned to me, but that's nice. I like that. I might take that from you.
No, man, that's it.
Gary.
You know, it's Gary. Like, hey, like, why am I out there knocking a guy's head off? Look, but realistically, look, you don't get paid for a round. Okay, 5-round fight. Let's go into the championship round. Now, it's nice to know that you can fight in that, but in the same token, dude, I ain't taking anything after one round. I'm gonna end it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. That's Gary never mentioned that, but that's something good, man. That's I mean, he had some interesting stories. I mean, he was explaining to me
dude, that dude's it's incredible, man. And I know he's having a tough time now with some different things, but man, that guy, sharp as a tack, funny. Oh, and he can hit you hard too, man. Don't mess around, and because he'll tag you.
Yeah, he was explaining to me his arm wrestling days and how many people he had to arm wrestle, and I was just bewildered. I was just like, what? That's crazy. I never knew that about him and stuff like that. So it was.
Yeah, well, I mean, like for us, our wrestling is kind of publicized. It's a big deal in the U.S., but arm wrestling is this little quiet little thing. I mean, heck, the only time that they even publicized it was what's that movie with Sylvester Stallone, Over the Top? That's where it gets a little pub. But other than that, arm wrestling is like this underground league thing.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit. Let's dive back into the good old fighting days. What's one thing that comes to mind when you think about your Pride days? Because again, you spent most of your career in Pride, correct? Most of your fighting career as in MMA. Damn, it's cold.
Well, I fought for the Raw team, which is Real American Wrestling, and
explain to everyone,
and then
just in case, explain to everyone what that actually is and how you got into that. Just in case they don't, I know the backstory, but just in case they don't know. So, what is the Raw team?
Well, wrestling kind of jumped into it. You had Dan Severn, Mark Coleman got into it. Don Fry got into it and started fighting. So these guys were wrestlers and got into it. Rico Chiapparelli, who was a national champion wrestler at Iowa, had a brother named Louis Chiapparelli who worked in the legal department and stuff like that. And well, Rico kind of got in there and saw all this, and he trained with the Machados. He knew, Hegan really well, Roba, and very good friends with Henzo Gracie. So he got to know those guys pretty well. And he was one of the few wrestlers that got to cross over and roll with those guys. I don't know if many of your fans or people listening to this can remember the dark ages, but back then, jiu-jitsu, especially that Gracie jiu-jitsu, did not mess with wrestlers. There was no crossover. It was oil and vinegar. Don't give them our secrets. We're trying to dominate this thing. It's this. But Henzo was a very smart guy. He loved this guy. He's probably one of my favorite guys. Know several of the Gracies, but he's probably my favorite. But he kind of like, no, I'm going to roll with this guy. Hegan Machado knew it. Jean-Jacques Machado knew it. They trained with Rico because they loved his wrestling base. And Rico had a really open mind, and the way he wrestled was kind of flowing, flopping around, but rolling around. So it really suited his jiu-jitsu. But Rico had it, Rico wrestled at Iowa, which was the dominant wrestling program in college. And Rico and his brother Louis weren't interested in, quote unquote, dominating the sport in terms of titles, but wanted to dominate the sport in terms of money. They wanted to hold the belts, yes, but they wanted to dominate the money. They wanted the best people out there. Let's go fight the toughest fights for the best money. That's where they came up with the slogan, anytime, anyone, anytime, anywhere. We'll fight anybody just because, it doesn't matter. That was the shirt said Raw, Real American Wrestling on the front, and on the back it said anyone, anytime, anywhere. And so we were interested in fighting people for money. Let's pick spots and go into different markets. So, when I came along, you got to remember who let's say initial Raw team are. You had Randy Couture, Dan Henderson, myself, Matt Lindland got in there, and a couple others, but that was our big stable at first. Well, Randy was in the UFC. At that time, the UFC didn't like the teammates fight team because they didn't want the same team, because a lot of times they wouldn't fight each other.
Gotcha.
So that was one of the little things they didn't want them to do, and so they didn't invite people in. So Randy kind of opened his foot in that door. Dan and I, we went overseas to Japan. I felt it was really important I go to Brazil. So one of the things that Rico and Louis wanted for me was to let's get into markets. Let's, for me, fighting wise, with the most respect, is to Brazil. I got to go down to Brazil. I got to make my bones in Brazil.
Gotcha.
I want to get the popularity, the publicity. I have to go make my bones in Japan. So I have to go to Japan and Brazil. And those are two places that we kind of said, look, for my career, we got to go.
Mm-hmm.
The UFC, that's great. They weren't paying big bucks at the time, et cetera. But we had a guy there. We had representation in the
Gotcha.
UFC. They wanted to get in. They wanted to get into organizations and dominate the organizations, finance, and make the most money.
Gotcha.
So I'm over in Japan. I went to Brazil, made my bones. Well, first I went to Japan, then I went to Brazil, in different fights and stuff, and I started being successful. They never seen a dude 286 pounds, 6'5", 6'4", 286 pounds move the way I did.
Move that fast.
And had a little bit of an idea. Dude, I'll tell you what, I am twice the fighter I am now mentally, but half the body, in terms of turning up my body. Yeah. I mean, it's just watching and learning and rolling around, kind of kicks myself in the head. Shit, if I'd learned it back then, I'd have been so much better. And I felt that was okay back then. But, the big thing with me is, one, I was kind of an anomaly in these organizations. I wasn't the best guy. I'm not going to say that, but I was an anomaly. It was bad matchup. If you were a striker, you're going on your back.
Yep.
If you're a jiu-jitsu guy, really hard to submit me. So Fabricio got me, but Murillo Bustamante, who I think was a better jiu-jitsu guy than Fabricio. Now Fabricio was good. He won Abu Dhabi, but rolling with Murillo was incredible for me. And that was my 40-minute fight, where I had a 40-minute fight with Murillo. I mean, I've been lucky. The one thing about me, it's kind of interesting, and I'm not to sidetrack this question, but we're really lucky with me is I've had one of the longest MMA fights out there. I know Gracie and Sakuraba had one for maybe an hour, but I'm in that top 5 somewhere with that 40-minute fight. You're going to have to look really hard, but I'm going to tell you, it was 40 minutes. And then the other one that I'm kind of proud of is I fought in the Tokyo Dome in front of 53,000 people. That was two cool things that were, in terms of MMA events, up there in that echelon. I'm up in that record. The one fight I had a draw with Murillo, and the other one I won. I had that rape choke against Matt Skelton. Which ended up costing me a bunch at the end. If you ever ask me about that, I'll tell you how that cost me.
Well, if we're here right now, how did it cost you?
Well, okay, man. Crazy deal. I'm over the event. Goodridge is my corner guy. We're in the Tokyo Dome. The event's at the Tokyo Dome.
Yes, sir.
And they throw me Matt Skelton, who's like a European champion boxer. Mm-hmm. So, okay, this is a boxer. And Goodridge, when he kind of heard about this fight, he goes, oh, they're giving you one. This is a gift. It's Christmas. It's Christmas. You know how Gary is. So I'm like, okay, I'll take the fight. So in the Tokyo Dome, this thing is so big. We're in it's kind of in a baseball setup. We're in one of the dugouts. And what they did it to us is we took a car and drove around to the back of the Tokyo Dome to come back in, because if you know anything about Pride, they have incredible theatrics and stuff like that to ring entrances and stuff. So we drove all the way around to the back because we came in through center field. They split the screen, the ramp came out, we walked down, pyrotechnics going off, all kinds of great stuff, right? But anyway, when we went back there, we went to a staging area. And that's where you did your final warm-up and stuff like that, and they checked you. Well, when I'm back there, Gary disappears for just a short period. I'm like, damn, where'd this dude go? So he comes back to me and he goes, hey, Tom. He goes, I just talked to somebody, we're not going to say who, but I talked to somebody. And he's like, they want you to stand with them. I'm like, what do you mean? They want you to stand with them. I'm like, why would I go, what do you mean? He goes, they want you to stand. I'm like, okay, I am standing. He goes, no, they want you to fight standing up. The whole fight, stand up. Don't take them down. They want you to stand. I'm like, what? I'm like, dude, I ain't standing with this dude. He's gonna knock my head off. You know, and maybe, I don't know. I mean, this dude's a boxer. Why am I gonna stand? You know, we saw how my Shayna Briggs fight went. So and I'm like, dude, what do you mean? What? And so he's like, I go, so then the kind of light bulb went off to me. It's like, I'm not going to go conspiratorial, say how they fix fights. Would that been a fix? Borderline, but kind of. But, I'm going to fight him his way. If he just said, oh, make him wrestle me, it'd be different. But so I'm like, okay, what do I do? What do you want me to do? I'm kind of serious now because I know I'm in Japan. We know who runs Pride, right? Yep. I mean, without saying, your listeners are pretty intelligent. They know who runs Pride. So I'm like, what do you want me to do? He goes, man, do what you got to do. You just fuck them up, man. Just do what you got to do. And I'm like, okay. So boom, it was good. Went down there, really cool. All of 53,000 people. That's a lot of folks in for a fight. Go out there. So I hit a shot right away. He kind of sprawls. I slide into it, kind of get him in a little helicopter, throw him to his back. And then he's in, I think I'm half mounted or mounted, and I'm kind of fighting his hand. I'm trying to get and create space so I can punch. He's hanging in there. So instead of kind of a forearm against the neck and creating space, I kind of put my hand across his throat. And I'm posturing off. Well, look, dude, even a kindergartner in jiu-jitsu knows if I create some space there's an easy armbar, kick the leg over, I'm screwed, etc. But I'm fighting a boxer. So I put my hand up on his throat and I'm going to create space. I'm pushing off, and all of a sudden he goes, I'm like, oh, snap. So, of course, what am I going to do? I'm going to clamp down hard, push down on his neck a little harder, and boom, lo and behold, he taps. So if you watch that fight, I kind of hit him with a little throw, bounce him, kind of mount, throw a little half punches, try to create space, and then you could see I push up on his throat, and he taps. He's like, what the heck? He want none of that. So win that fight, man. We're all excited. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm in the moment, dude. 53,000 people, ooh, especially Japan. Walk back, and one of the first things, I had some representation over in Japan. They're like, Tom-san, what did you do? I'm like, uh-oh. I'm like, oh, I won, but it was a really guarded. And then it wasn't talked about, but it's like, what did you do? And I'm like, okay. And Goodridge, man, he's just great. You saw him at the event. You kind of Google it. So I go back in there, and it's like, Tom-san, what'd you do? You were supposed to stand. I'm like, oh, okay. But not a whole lot they could do to me, so to speak, because one, I just won. I'm a big dude, and lots of people around, blah, blah, blah. So, and I wasn't even thinking this at the time. I kind of reflected back on it. I'm like, damn, that dude's going to ice me outside or something. But so no, I didn't, boom, didn't stand with the guy. Well, lo and behold, I didn't have a fight for a while. No fights for a while. So I'm at Gary's next fight because I'm working his corner. So they didn't kind of kick me out, but I don't hear from him. I'm at Gary's next fight. And I'm in the Olympic Stadium in Tokyo. It's an outdoor stadium. That's the one where Inoki parachuted in. I don't know if people know that history and stuff like that, but a big deal. Bob Sapp fought Nogueira because Nogueira was in our locker room. I think Klokop was in our locker room, et cetera. So I kind of hand fought with those guys and messed with those guys, help those guys get ready. And they come in, the K1 people come in, some Pride people come in, my manager comes in, Tom-san, we come in here, we get to fit you for gloves. I'm like, what are you talking about? So they're fitting me with boxing gloves. Your next fight, K1. I'm like, what? Oh, okay. Contract. And then my guy's like, hey, this is your contract. Okay, you want to take the fight. You could deny it. You could say no. But it's money. I was contracted to make X a fight, et cetera. I have this many fights, X a fight, and stuff like that. Well, what they did is they basically said, look, you don't have to fight over here anymore, or you have to fight K1. You want to get paid, you're going to fight K1. So boom. They fitted me for gloves. I had to fight K1. And I fought Hirama Amada in Bob Sapp's little event, because Bob Sapp was huge at that time over there. And he was like the coach of this squad, Magnificent Seven, that we fought in there. So because I didn't stand with this guy, guess what? Tom had to fight K1 now. So that was their way of punishing me and making me fight stand-up over in Japan, because they had my contract. And if I wanted to fight over in Japan, I was going to fight their way, or I wasn't going to fight at all. So when I say that kind of screwed me, that's how I screwed myself. If I'd have stood with them, I could have been like Coleman maybe. And we know how the Coleman Takada story is. If you don't know that, Coleman, whatever. I'm not even going to guess. You have to get him on, ask him, whatever, but make him say it. But Coleman fought Takada and Takada beat Coleman. Right. But so, yeah, that's how I screwed myself. Long story.
Isn't that crazy though? Like, so let me ask you a question. So how
they were.
How many fights did you have in the contract? Like I you said that they like, since you fought in Japan and stuff, like you had a certain amount of fights. How many fights were under contract for you?
Now, like different organizations would have a couple fight contract. Like I fought in Mars,
Okay.
and that had they had different stipulations. I fought in an organization called WWF or what was that? Oh man, I can't remember, man. I've been hitting the head too many times. But my contracts were stipulated on the next event I'd get paid more. I fought the WFF, World Fighting Federation, was one of them that I fought in. I think Tom Kalili was one of the founders of that. But that was on a premise where these fighters would fight in one show, then the next show you'd build on that. And so I had multiple contracts in different organizations. I was the freelancer guy, and I was going to the different organizations because we were trying to make money. I mean, Randy was fighting in the UFC, so we had a heavyweight representation there. But my job was to go and fight these other fights, try to get better, and then fight these other fights. And I started, quote unquote, racking dudes up, going to different organizations. And then we got down to Brazil, and then got hooked up in Brazil. Like I said, that was one of the places that, you had to make your bones. And that's when I fought in the Brazil Open in 97. Is that right? 97 or something like that, the Brazil Open Valtudo.
Yeah,
and that's when I'm fighting Randleman, which that fight honestly should have never happened. But, it did. Sorry. That's his, rest his, God rest his soul. He's passed. But that fight should have never happened. That was, love this guy to death. That was Mark Coleman's fault. That fight should have never happened.
Interesting. Wow. That's again.
The interesting part, I know we've got a glitch in our timing.
That's fine.
Sorry. And it kind of breaks out here, but I hope you're hearing me clean when I say this. But the reason I say that fight should never happen, Kevin went down to Brazil once already and just mopped up somebody. He crushed it down there. And the way events like that work down there in Brazil is they bring you down there, you fight in the tournament, and then you fight if you win the tournament, you fight the super champ winner. Like that's how Abu Dhabi is. If you win the ultimate in Abu Dhabi, you have a super fight every year. There's one guy. So each year you have the returning super fight winner versus the tournament winner. Well, Kevin fought down there and won a tournament. So he was the guy. So he should have fought the super fight, whether it was against, gosh, who was it? Was it Murillo, or he would have had to fight one of those guys. Mm-hmm. And invariably, they kind of screwed Coleman over. I knew going into the fight, Triple always said, hey, you got to go down there and you might fight Kevin. Well, Mark Coleman, good friend of mine, calls me up. He said, hey, man, going down, I hear you going to fight in the Brazil tournament. I'm like, yeah, I got to. I got to make my name. I'm still not the guy yet. I want to be the guy.
Yeah.
And I have to make my bones down there. So going down there, he says, hey, Kev's going to be in that tournament. And, it's probably not a good idea for you to go down there and fight down there. And I'm like, man, I got to make my bones. You need to pull them out yourself. He goes, well, looks like you're going to have to fight him. I'm like,
wow.
Okay. Like I'm going to be scared.
Yeah.
Dude, I knew Kevin. The dude's tough as nails. I mean, he wasn't the guy he ultimately became in fighting, but he's still a stud. He was huge. So I go down there and I'm like, man, okay, we do all the interviews and stuff like that. So, then obviously we get into the event and doing all the interviews and I'm like, okay, this is what it's got to be. And then ironically enough, on that same card was another pretty tough dude in the light heavyweight division, a guy named Dan Henderson. People kind of maybe overlooked that or one of the other. Henderson fought on that card too and won the light heavyweight title, and I won the heavyweight title. And I fought Kevin in the finals, and a lot of people kind of know how that went and stuff like that. But that's why I say when it comes to wrestling and fighting, so to speak, size matters.
Yeah, definitely. But that's awesome. Again, this is one of the reasons why I love talking to fighters and this podcast, just because I get to listen to stories like this, you know, fights that I've seen before, but now I have almost like a sneak peek of what actually happened, or your side of the story of the fight, which is really, really cool and stuff like that. So still can't believe they made you fight in K1, man. And that was the whole situation. That's nuts.
Well, that wasn't even my first. Okay, that was my first fight, and then okay, like I said, they dude, when you diss them, you got to pay, and so okay, I lose to Amada in that fight, and then I go back and they're like, okay, so then they stick me in another K1 fight, and this time they stick me with a guy named Jan Norte, the giant. Jan's like 6'9". He's like huge. I mean, people who he's fought some MMA. Actually, Gary fought him in MMA, and I knew Jan because Steve Calacuta was kind of Gary's striking coach a little bit. Okay. Worked with Steve just a little bit and everything. So crazy. Gary's over there training for this event that he's fighting over in a K1 event over there. Well, Gary's just absolutely crazy. In the sense that, man, he'll fight anybody. He literally will fight anybody. Back in the day, he would have fought anybody, man. If his mom will go out there, right price, he fights her. I don't blame him. So I'm just finishing up my wrestling career and stuff like that, and I had scope knee surgery on my right knee. I had my knee. So I'm literally on my couch with my knee elevated, icing it at the time. And I'm probably 5-6 days after having my knee scoped. Now, it's not major surgery, but it's scoped. You know, I mean, I had it. I've had it done before in my career, and I wrestled like 8 days later. So, yeah, I'm a knucklehead. Would I do it again now or promote my kids to do that? No, that's just asinine. But I'm sitting on my couch, and Gary's like, yo, Tomboy. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? Where you at? He goes, oh, I'm in Japan. And he goes, I think this is like a Monday. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, I'm sitting on my couch, man. Daughter's here, not doing anything. He goes, I got to fight for you. I go, who and how much?
Wow.
He goes, you got to fight Jan. I said, man. And he goes, it's K1. I'm like, of course it is. But I said it sarcastically because we both knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. And they said, and Gary's like, they said to ask, you know, you want to fight. They need somebody. So-and-so pulled out. They need somebody to fight Jan. And I'm like, dude, I'm on the couch. I mean, I just had surgery. He goes, no, man. We'll talk to Jan. No kicks. You just go in there and strike. Just no kicks. You just come on in there. You think you can fight that? I'm like, yeah. How much? Tells me a price. I'm like, okay. I tell my wife, and I'm like, okay, honey, I'm going to go do this. She's like, what? She's pissed off at me. There's no way about that. So I'm getting chewed up by my wife. I'm like, I'm going to get paid this. She's like, you're still stupid. And she's mad at me for doing it. I'm like, dude, I need some money. Yeah. So guess what? I'm on a plane flying over there, and I've got my knees shaved. I mean, it's all good, elevated. It's kind of blown up, aching a little bit. So I get over there, and you know, we go over there and meet Gary, and then you know, it's over and done with right now. But you know, one of the stipulations says I'm just a visitor, going to watch the fights. Do not tell them I'm here to fight because I didn't have my work visa set up. Okay. So even in Japan, you can go through customs, no problem. You're a visitor. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to work in that country and make revenue in that country, you have to get a special work permit and a work visa stamped in your passport. Gotcha. Well, if I'm asked, one of the stipulations was I'm just there visiting. I'm watching K1 fights, big Gary Goodridge fan, yada, yada, yada. So, and I was asked that. So we get through customs, no problem. So we go in there in a fight, and we have a guy named Kobus Hassman, who's there. He's one of Kelakuta's guys, et cetera. And he goes, look, Jan's kind of methodical when he fights. He's a big dude. He goes, look, you know, he likes to kind of corner you and take his time in doing that. And he goes, look, you just got to rush. You got to bum rush him and everything else. And you know, see. So, boom, I warm up. And, dude, we made the deal. There's no kicks. No kicks. So go out there. Man, I just kind of steamrolled across, you know, a little rocky, a little push in the corner. I'm just wailing away. I'm not. Gosh, there's a clip in me. I'm kind of like heads away, eyes closed. I'm throwing a big right hand, and I'm just teeing off on Jan. Guess what? I hit a nice clean right. He drops. I'm like, oh, snap. Look at this. Move me back, give him a count. And they're like, and they look over. He's like, go. And they're like, yeah, go press him. boom, and so Jan gets up. He's kind of a little groggy. I just kind of charge back, go, ugh, and just start teeing off on him. Well, Jan throws a sneaky little left hook, and if you ever watch the fight, like I say, it's not very pretty. Geez, it's that ugly date you kind of regret doing, but I did it anyway. He clips me with this little hook, little baby hook, and all of a sudden I start like, and I start kind of just, oh no, I'm like, no, don't do that, and I start swinging some more, and I kind of hit him right on the jaw, dropped him, knocked him out. I think it was a TKO. I didn't knock him out clean. It was a TKO. End up winning the fight. I'm like, oh my God, what did I? Literally 7-8 days earlier, I just had surgery on my knee, and now I just knocked the dude out in K1. That is crazy.
That is.
And then,
crazy.
like I said, if you look at it, some of the Japanese people that that I owed, etc., were looking on there. They're like checking ringside shots. It's like, oh my gosh, look what you did. They couldn't believe I knocked out Jan, and nobody really knocked out Jan. He wasn't a great fighter. He was a good journeyman. That was a huge dude, journeyman. He fought Peter Arts. He fought, oh my gosh, who else did he fight? Ernesto Hoost. I mean, he's fought some good people, in K1. So he was a veteran, and I knocked him out. So, man, that was cool. And then to kind of supplement that, like I said, there were no fixing on that by anything that I fought that fight. So then what they do, they throw me into the Wolves against Mike Bernardo. So another K1 fight right after that, because I knocked out Jan, that means I can do something. So then they had me fight Mike Bernardo in K1, and that was the year that Bernardo, they had these qualifiers to get into K1, these continental qualifiers, that final 16 or whatever. Bernardo had missed his, but Bernardo was a phenomenal K1 fighter, etc. And this time they actually told me, had plenty of time in advance. I studied, kind of looked at some fight tape on him. Bernardo had a little spot behind his, his left ear. You tag him up here, high up on the jaw. It's a soft spot. It's just really weird. You watch this fight, but you got to hit it. And so I go out there and I fought Bernardo again, another K1 fight. Boom! I throw this big overhand right, hit him right in the button. Boom! He dropped. I'm like, oh snap! Drop him. He gets up. I kind of start brawling again. Boom! Hit him again. Drop him again. Now it's 3 knockdown rule in K1. So I'm excited. I'm like, oh, okay. And then, like I said, Gary's there in my corner. I've been on his, et cetera. And then my corner, I think Louis Chipper's in there. Just one more. I see him go, one more. Just one more knockdown. It's over. You don't need to knock him out. Just knock him down one more time. So I'm going out there, and I'm kind of teeing off, et cetera. Now, Bernardo's hanging on big time, and Bernardo's a savvy guy. Does the shoulder punches, and I think in the course of even that first round, I think I threw him on his back. He tried to get dirty, and I just threw him on. I got yellow carded. Who cares? The yellow card. I should be here anyway. Gosh, I'm on house money right now. So I'm going out there, and then Bernardo drops me. Boom. He throws that. He had nasty left. Drops me. Boom. Take the 8 count. Get up. One more. And they're like, one more. I'm like, oh shit. He just hit me once. He needs 2. So yeah. So I go out there, boom, I'm teeing off, and next thing I know, Bernardo hits me, clips me again. Nice shot, but he threw everything into it. So he threw it, and he leaned into me. And if you ever see the fight, he kind of falls into me, and he pushes me down. He kind of pushes his gloves into my chest. As I went down, I snapped. So my head just snapped against the canvas. And he dropped me, fair enough, but that when my head snapped and hit, you see me with my gloves, I'm like, ugh. And I kind of rolled to my side and started getting up. I'm like, oh, man. And it wasn't because of the punch. It was because my head snapped on the canvas. And I'm like, man, that rang my bell. And I'm getting up, boom, 8 count, boom, I'm done. Counted me out, boom. And he beat me. But even then, that's 5 downs in 1 round. I mean,
that's
when
crazy.
You see that? And he qualified for the K1. And I'm thinking to myself, God, I could have qualified for the K1. That would have been cool. But then I had to fight a guy like Hoost or Banner, which would have killed me, put me in the hospital.
Yeah, those guys. Once you get up there in that, like that's an elite level, man. That's scary.
Oh, Arch, Hoost, LeBanner, those dudes. Ray Sefu. I mean, those dudes.
Beast.
Crazy. Yeah.
But that's awesome, man. And I love it. Like you can tell while you talk about it, you still have the passion for it. You still have passion and the stories you're telling. I love it. It was like when I was listening to Gary again. Gary was explaining his stuff, man, and it's great to see legends and just to have you guys on and just explain your story and just to get your stories out there. I mean, Gary was having a great time with it, and that's one thing I do enjoy when I talk to fighters is the excitement and the look on your face when you're explaining stuff. And I know it brings it back. I know it brings you back, man.
Yeah, the best times are with everybody. I mean, dude, we fought these guys, but one of the big deals was the Tokyo Hilton. K1 or even Pride, we stayed at the Tokyo Hilton. And then, but just a practice with everybody, because everybody was all hanging out and everything else until then it's fight day. Nobody talked to each other in fight day. But up until that point, we're all talking to each other. Their fight camps are there, etc. Some guys have a little chip up their ass and they want to get all tough guy and stuff like that. So we just kind of let them eat their own. But for the most part, man, you got that camaraderie with all those guys. And that was probably the coolest thing, from all these different fighters. And then the bus rides. In Pride, you usually stayed, it depends, 15 minutes, an hour away from the venue, etc. So you have your blue corner and red corner. You'd go over in the buses and you'd load up in the buses, and there'd be some murmurs on the buses, but then you rode back with the same group of guys. Hey, we're getting ready. Remember, we're going to have a good time. I went, what was it? Boss Rutan's 45th birthday party. We went down to Shinjuku. Oh, my goodness. That one I'm not going to tell any stories about, but
we'll leave that.
We almost took on a couple bars on that one. That was absolutely crazy. I think I fought Tim Kakalf on that fight. I won that fight at a crazy choke, and then we went out for Boss's party, and
that's awesome. Now, before I let you go, what was your greatest memory or moment in your eyes in combat sports in general? Because again, you've done it all. You're in the ring with you did Pride, and then you did K1. So what would be your proudest moment, or something that you would look back and be like, yeah, that was a great time?
Well, two things kind of step out, and I mentioned them both. One, 40-minute fight against Murillo. I think that one is huge because, and I fought down in Brazil and I fought in Japan and everything else, but that really did it for me. And I think it helped me win over Brazilian jiu-jitsu people in terms of, he was one of their better guys. They had a lot of great guys, etc. But Murillo was really good. He ended up winning the UFC light heavyweight title at one time, not too long after we fought. But a 40-minute fight. Dude, they're fighting 25 minutes now, and that's long. That's 5 rounds. That's championship. I fought for 40 minutes. Now, I'm a heavyweight that fought for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm kind of proud of that.
Yeah, of course. You should be proud of that because, again, a lot of heavyweights.
The way that was crazy. It was supposed to be, it was supposed to be 20. They added 10. They added another 10, blah, blah, blah. So it was a 40-minute draw. And then, like I said, I talk about that and fighting in front of 53,000 people. As a wrestling person, I was one of the best in the world. I was ranked in the top 5, top 3 in the world, and what I did. I've won the World Cup, and I've done some really, really fun stuff in wrestling and beaten some really good people. 1996, I beat the Olympic gold medalist, the Olympic silver medalist, and the 4th place finisher, and as long as some of the others. But the one guy I didn't beat was Bruce Baumgartner from our country. But so I could compete there, etc. But we never got the accolades in wrestling. Wrestling wasn't a big deal. But now I fight. Even to this day, hey, what's up, man? You're the big cat. What's up, big cat? And I'm like, dude, I used to be a pretty good wrestler back in the day, but they always remember my nickname fighting wise. And so those are probably some really highlights. In terms of beating Kevin, that's my friend. That was cool. And that kind of validated me a great deal. But in the same token, memory for me, that was my friend. Yeah, but nah, we're okay with that one. But it's pretty cool, and I've had fun. People, have you done this? I was like, well, you get older, you do a lot more stuff. And I've had a great deal of success wrestling wise, and I've had some success in fighting wise on some different levels with some people. And then, oh, by the way, I was willing to fight the best. I fought in Abu Dhabi. I grappled in Abu Dhabi twice, was invited there and wrestled twice, competed over there, and won matches over there. I beat Roberto Travin the one year over there, who was a phenomenal jiu-jitsu specialist. And got to know a lot of great people. Vitor Belfort, good friend of mine. Just Hickson. Out of respect. Those Henzo, great guy. Hoyce. Man, there's some. Just met some great people. And since then I've gone down back in the day when he was fighting out of Florida, trained with Alistair, over him, helping him get ready when he was fighting with the Black Zillions down there. So yeah, I was just, it weaves you through so many, when you get to an elite level, it's like a pyramid. You get there in the early stages, you talk about these guys, but when you get closer to the top, there's less people, but you get to know those people. So there's people that I haven't met. Hey, Tom, man, Tom Erikson, right? Yeah, man, I really appreciate you. Dude, I appreciate you. I remember watching you, and it's just a really instant bond where you get to talk to somebody. You're in the club. You don't have to show your ID. You're already in the club because of who you are and what you've accomplished in your life and stuff like that. And that's probably one of the coolest things that this thing's all been enable me to do.
That's awesome. I just want to say before I let you go, Tom, that I do appreciate you taking your time out of your day. I know you're extremely busy guy, wrestling coach and stuff like that, but I do appreciate you coming on and just giving your insight on your legendary career. I mean, everyone loves you. I mean, you're a fan favorite. I'm still a bigger fan now that I personally, have that connection where I've talked to you. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on, man.
No, man, this is thank you for the opportunity. If it's not for people like you, even in wrestling, it's great to know a little bit about the roots and the history of where the sport came from. And I don't want to get too nostalgic, but it's building off the people like myself and others, Gary, Henzo, that built to where our sport is nowadays. It's so impressive. And man, we appreciate people like yourself that let us old timers get to sit there and talk and shake on your program and stuff like that and visit. But man, I love talking to you guys. Gary loves talking to you guys too. But if there's ever anything you ever want to do a Q&A or something like that, or get back on, I'd absolutely love to be back on and do whatever I can for you guys.
Sounds good, man. Well, again, like I said, I have your number. We'll keep in contact and stuff like that. Maybe we'll have you and Gary come on and you guys can share some stories. But again, like I said, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and it's been more of an honor to have you on the show.
Man, like I said, again, I appreciate it. I don't know if you want Gary and I both on at the same time. That might really go off rails, but no, man, I appreciate it. And like I said, anything I could do for you guys, man, hit me up. I'm more than time willing. I'm more than willing to help. Absolutely, man. You guys have an awesome day, and thank you.
Thank you so much.